I've got like 3 Words of Friends games going right now. In fact, I got 4 games going right now. Okay, just a second. Oot. Oot is not a word. Oh,
I use
it is.
regularly.
No, it is.
Yeah.
Oot. OOT is a word.
Yeah. It's Canadian. Get oot. Get oot of here.
That's not it. No, I don't know what it means.
Peace oot.
Oot. And woot. Oh, woot is a word. Okay, there we go. I just got 34 points with woot.
Woot woot.
So, hi.
Hello.
So, there's 2 kinds of people in the world. I've heard that statement so many times it drives me crazy.
Like, really? Only two
just
kinds
2
of people?
Yep. There's what we call expedients, and there's what we call processors. All right, and there's a lot of differences between the 2, and here's one of the differences. Processors tend to think to talk, and expedients tend to talk to think. Ethan, which one would you say you are? Are you a think to talker, or are you a talk to thinker?
I tend not think at all and just talk.
Okay, that's the third kind of person.
That's the third kind of person.
Yeah, actually, that's probably what I am too.
But generally speaking, I am more of on the processor side.
Yeah.
I think to talk, right? So I'm a little bit more, would come across a little more deliberate and slow with the way I deliver, which you probably all figured that out by now.
Yeah, and I'm definitely a talk to thinker. And what that means is, processors think to talk, expedients talk to think. Now, that doesn't mean that expedients aren't processing. It really is about how we process. So I talk to think. Christy, my wife, thinks to talk. Our first years of marriage, when we were having a fight or an argument, I am chasing her around the house trying to get her to talk to me so I can process. And I found out really early in our marriage that she apparently cannot process while being chased.
Go figure, huh? This sounds like a stupid question.
Probably is, because, go ahead. Skilled managers equals high morale, which equals all that cool stuff that you cannot pay for and you can't punish for.
When you close off that feedback channel, you are not going to be able to hear the truth.
In the first microseconds, your brain can't tell the difference between physical danger and what we call social danger.
I'm pissed off at you.
Me, specifically?
Well, just because you're my boss and all.
Employees tend to get promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. Go forward and don't suck.
Folks, ladies, gentlemen, everybody out there, welcome to another episode of the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. Because I'm a podcast host, I like to put a lot of different inflections in my voice.
This is Michael Nash with Nash Consulting.
And I'm Ethan Nash,
our podcast host.
We got a fun one for you today, folks.
Fun.
This is going to be a fun one. For me, it's actually my favorite subject to teach. And I don't know. What about yours?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely in my top 20.
Top 20. Okay. Well, good. Let's right up there. We are about to embark on a journey here, folks. A journey of multiple episodes. I don't think we've quite decided how many episodes this will be. Probably about 3 or so. And this is going to be a series on behavioral styles. Understanding how we show up in the workplace, how other people show up in the workplace, how we can use that to better communicate, manage at a deeper level, and a lot of other really cool things.
Yeah, because we believe that if you're going to be an effective leader, if you're going to be an effective manager, you need to be growing as a human. And one of the ways you grow as a human is by beginning to discover those things about you, the impact you have on others that you weren't aware of, and then making some slight adjustments when that's needed. And you also get to understand your employees better. And if I understand my employee better, I'm going to be a much better manager because I'm going to be able to custom fit my management a little bit more to what they need.
Totes. You don't know what you don't know. We like to say that a lot. And that's really kind of the theme behind all of this.
You don't know what you don't know about what you don't know.
Exactly. All right. Sorry, folks. We digress. We are not necessarily going to get into what exactly the 4 different behavioral styles are today. We will certainly get into that, and we'll explain more what that means. Instead, before we can get there, we're going to focus on understanding the social science behind the 4 spectrums of human behavior. Now, this is pretty well established in the social science realm, and we're going to go through them. And we're going to ask you to kind of think about this and figure out where you might fall on these different spectrums. And it's going to be a kick in the pants time.
It's going to be fun. In fact, we're going to talk about, as Ethan said, 4 spectrums. We're going to talk about the way you make decisions. That's number 1. We're going to talk about how you prefer your environment. Your environment's going to be how you do conflict. It's going to be how you do how you prefer change. A little bit of it will be physical, but it's about your environment in lots of different aspects. The third thing is going to be how we accomplish tasks. And the last one's going to be how we show up socially.
All right. That sounds fun.
And as Ethan said, we're going to talk about these spectrums in terms of giving you kind of basically a word that goes on. If you could kind of picture this on the left side of the spectrum and a word that goes on the right side of the spectrum. And we're asking you to figure out which of those 2 human beings do you most identify with? Are you a little bit more like the word that we're going to put on the left, or are you a little bit more like the word we're going to put on the right?
Right. So we're talking about what people do.
What people do. Let's start with...
Hey.
Oh,
before we get into it,
yes.
Question for you.
Yes.
There was a rumor been going around about you, Mr. Nash.
Oh boy.
And I will take this opportunity to confront you in public.
In public. All right.
Is it true? So you've taught this behavioral style class many, many times. Would you say hundreds or thousands?
Hundreds.
You might be getting up to this thousands.
Maybe 1,000. I've been teaching this for 23 years, and a lot of times.
Wow. Okay. Is it true that maybe like a few weeks ago you taught this class inebriated in some way or form?
I can't believe you're bringing this up on air.
Right.
Okay, so I guess there's this...
Explain yourself.
All right. So
Monday morning, getting ready.
No, it wasn't Monday morning. It was on purpose. I don't know if our listeners have ever heard of Drunk History. It's an awesome show.
Drunk History,
where these historians get drunk and then they tell their history story and actors act it out while they're talking. It's really, really funny. There's a local pub near where I live called the Bushel and Bee, and
shout out the Bushel and Bee.
Oh, it's
Leavenworth,
awesome.
Washington.
It's awesome. They've got great beers and ciders, and they do a once a month thing called a Tipsy Talk. And they have a professional, an expert on something come in, and when you first show up, you're supposed to show up an hour and a half early. They give you $50 and they direct you what to do with that $50, and you're supposed to basically drink it. So I had a lot of things. I had several shots and
quite a few drinks with
a couple Long Island iced teas and some beers, and my God, this isn't very professional, dude. I mean, we're talking to my clients right now, but just know that I would never do this when I'm working with your organization. I would never do this.
He never gets drunk before he teaches your employees.
No, I promise. But I got quite drunk. In fact, there's only one other time in my life that I'd ever been that drunk. And actually, Ethan, you knew about that one too. So, so I got pretty drunk, and then I got up in front of a whole bunch of people and I taught behavior styles, and it was a hoot as far as I can remember.
That's great. So do you think it enhanced your cognitive ability or?
No, not at all. Not at all. But I did notice there was some video, and so I'm still trying to chase those down because I really don't want those to get out.
All right. Fair enough. Well,
thank you for bringing that up, Easton.
Yeah. Well, I brought it up because it is Friday afternoon, nearly 5 o'clock now. I'm curious, do you want a gin and tonic?
Do I want a gin and tonic?
Yeah.
Does the Pope have lips? Wait, no. Does a duck have lips? Does a bear have lips in the woods?
I'm going to take that as a yes. Let's go get one.
Awesome.
Hey, folks, if you've found value from listening to this podcast and you'd like to support us, you could go to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and leave us a review. Leaving us a review helps other people find the show. We do appreciate it. Really. All right. Bye. All right, folks. We are back with gin and tonic in hand. Cheers.
Cheers, Ethan.
Again, just to be clear, folks, nobody gets drunk and teaches this class except for Mike. Only at a pub on the weekend.
Yes. I'm a little...
You didn't get paid for it, by the way.
I did not get paid for it, and I'm a little nervous about everything we just said going out there in public. So
we may cut that out. If you're hearing this, then apparently we lack discrepancy.
Exactly.
So we are going to talk about the 4 spectrums.
We lack discretion.
Discretion.
Yeah, we lack discretion, not discrepancy.
What did that even mean?
We've only had 3 sips of our gin and tonic.
Not even.
All right, let's go.
So we're going to describe these 4 spectrums of human behavior. And like I said, these are pretty well-known spectrums of human behavior. They're used in the social sciences in a lot of different ways. It's how you decide, how you like your environment, how you accomplish tasks, and how you relate to others.
Yep.
So I'll let you take the lead on this.
All right.
We'll go from there.
Let's talk about the first spectrum, which is about decision making. And I'm going to ask you to consider you yourself being either on the process side of the spectrum or on the fast side of the spectrum. Now, let's talk about the kind of decisions we're talking about and not talking about. I'm not talking about big, huge life decisions, who you married and how long it took you to decide which college to go to. We're talking about micro decisions you're making all day long that you don't even recognize as decisions often.
Yeah. Or they're just the day-to-day little things you have to decide on, such as what to have for breakfast. Yeah,
and maybe some shopping things, or which thing to do first that's on your desk, or answering a question that somebody poses. You know, you're going to have people that are more process-oriented, people that are more fast. And as we're going through these, listeners, we're asking you to decide which of these 2 are you more. It sounds like you more, and you're going to see yourself on both sides for sure. This isn't going to be mutually exclusive or a black and white thing, but one of these 2 different ways of showing up is going to be more true for you. And the problem, of course, in self-assessment is you're not supposed to really be able to self-assess your own behavior style, because behavior styles is about how you actually show up, how others perceive you. But we're going to go ahead and start with self-assessment here.
Right. So decision making. So there's process on one side, there's fast on the other side.
Yeah. And this shows up in terms of, in one example we've already talked about in our intro. Generally, not always, but generally your processors think to talk. The fast people talk to think.
Right.
And that's how they process. And that means, like we just sort of did there, processors tend to talk a little more slowly, a little more deliberately. People on the fast side tend to talk a little more quickly. They tend to have fewer pauses. And what tends to go with that, like it or not, is fast people tend to be a little bit more assertive listeners, which means I'm more likely to interrupt. I'm a little bit more likely to finish your sentence. I'm a little more likely to use more airtime. People on the process side are a little bit more likely to kind of, talk slowly so they get cut off more often. They get interrupted. They wait their turn, which means they often in the workplace don't get their turn, and they can be disenfranchised. In meetings because they're going to have something to say, but they're still processing and they really haven't felt like it was their turn because everyone else is still talking. And so they don't get their turn.
You just read my mind.
I just spoke for you, which is what we do.
Exactly. So if you've already decided which one you are, great. If you're still working on deciding which one you are, you're probably a processor.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Anything else to say on this one?
It's just a little bit more the speed by which people get to their decisions, right? Which is kind of the point here. People on the fast side are going to be a little bit more excited about efficiency and getting there quicker. People on the process side are going to be a little bit more motivated by really kind of thinking it through and taking a little bit more time. We actually had in class, this was years and years ago, we had this snarky guy on the fast side, and he was making fun of the processors, and he says, "You guys are, ready, aim, fire." And the process guy goes, "Yeah, you guys are like fire," and then just go draw a circle around the bullet.
Right.
So that's decision making.
Okay. Next one is environment. Stable on the left, or stable on one side, and dynamic on the right, on the other side.
Yeah. So the first one's process fast. This one is stable, dynamic. And this one's complex because there's actually 3 separate things going on under environment. One, and we're going to make these pretty quick here today, but one of them has to do, probably the most important one, in fact, of the 3, this has to do with conflict. And it's a little bit hard to describe, but people on the dynamic side are going to be a little bit more direct, possibly a little bit more blunt. They're going to be tending to say what they think a little bit more, maybe with strong opinions. People on the stable side are going to be a little more likely to value harmony and maybe soft sell their opinions, especially if their opinion is they disagree with you or they think you're doing something wrong. They might say it more gently. In some cases, people on the stable side may not really speak what they're really thinking, and because of that, possibly get misread. Whereas people on the dynamic side, they might be more likely to have to go through life saying things like, "Oh, all I said was, I don't know how I hurt her feelings."
So, again, we're talking about conflict. This is just one of the three elements that fall under the environment category.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So let's just back up a second here. There's conflict, there's change, and there's physical, as in your physical environment. Right. So we're just talking about conflict right now. Right. With dynamic people, they might be people that kind of engage in debate for sport a little more.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's kind of fun for them. This is really stressful for stable people.
Yes.
Now again, this is a construct, and you're going to see yourself on both sides of these. You know, for me, I actually, although I fall more on the stable side in general, I actually do like to engage in debate a lot for sport. So that's just an example to keep in mind that this isn't, set for everybody. We're not implying that everybody falls into each category.
And I would like to take a side note on that, buddy. I actually don't agree with you.
You don't agree with me
about where you are on this continuum. And again, this actually will get us to this kind of this deeper point here. Do we set our own? Are we accurate when we describe our own behavior style? When we self-assess? In reality, as we're working through behavior styles, we tend to find that it's actually others who are more accurate about our behavior style, right?
Exactly,
because it's the way we show up. Mm-hmm. And I like the way you said that. It's a construct. It is a construct that's based around the idea of how we actually impact other people.
Okay.
And I would say if I go through the three different categories of environment, I really don't see you on the stable side at all. I would. In fact, let's start with this first one. This thing around conflict.
You're saying I'm unstable?
No, the opposite of stable is not unstable in this construct.
All right.
It is dynamic, and when it comes to conflict, I would say that you show up in all three of those areas more on the dynamic side, and including the one that you just talked about. I think you are more likely to interject an opinion that would be different than the one that you're hearing. I think you're more likely to say I disagree, and you will tend to say it pretty. Not rudely, not, you're not in anyone's face, but you're certainly not shy to say, no, that's wrong, or I see it this way. You seem to like debating. You and I get into some good ones. I think you tend to show up that way.
All right. That's good to know. Again, that's goes to show that we don't know what we don't know about how we show up. For some reason, I always had considered myself on maybe the other side of that, but now that you explained it, that does make sense.
Yeah, I do think I agree with you on the process versus fast. I think you're definitely a processor. I'm more on the fast side when it comes to decision making. But yeah, now environment. Let's go back to this conflict piece under environment. It's not just debate or open conflict, right? It also includes some subtle stuff. I'll never forget. My wife and I were down in San Francisco and we were on vacation and we'd been thinking about painting our home and we were thinking about how we were going to, what color we were going to paint our house. And we go through this neighborhood and I saw this house that I thought was so cool. It was basically bright red. Most of the house was bright red. The doors and the trim was yellow, and the gables area on top was orange. And it looked just the coolest thing. And I said,
I bet.
It was really cool. I go, hey, Christy, we should paint our house that way. And she says, I don't know. Now, when a dynamic hears, I don't know, he hears, I'm almost there. I almost got it.
Right.
I'm close. I just need to push a little harder.
Or it's probably as good as a yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, all right, they didn't say no.
They didn't say no. That's exactly right. So,
okay, I guess I am a dynamic.
Yeah, you are, right? And now when a stable says, I don't know, at least in that case, she means hell no.
Right.
There's no chance in hell we're going to paint our house that color. So a month later, we're at the paint store and I'm over there looking at the oranges and the reds. And she's like, what are you doing? We are not going to paint our house that color. And I'm like, Christy, we talked about this.
Don't you remember?
You remember we agreed on this.
You said yes. Right?
Right. Exactly. And so now I want to give you a little bit of dark spin on this. You ready for a little bit of a dark spin?
Yeah.
Take another sip of your gin, another dark spin here. It's this relationship. It's the stable dynamic. And this can be in the workplace. This could be a marriage. It's not completely uncommon for the stable person to say after 20 years or whatever, I'm done. I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. I haven't had a voice for 20 years. And the dynamic's thinking, what do you mean? I thought you always wanted to go to the restaurant I wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's not uncommon. And it comes from maybe probably a lack of awareness of these differeces. It happens when trust and respect has been impacted and negatively impacted over time. So there's a range of how this sort of stable dynamic thing can show up.
Right. And this is how it shows up in relationships, how it shows up in the workplace. I mean, the reasons we get married and the reasons we get divorced or in relationships and out of relationships are often the same reasons.
Yeah. In fact, you're getting to this really important point. These differences that we're describing here today, these opposites actually attract. Like literally, this is based on research. In fact, some of the best, when I say best dating sites online, I mean the dating sites that have been shown to lead to the most long-term relationships. They are literally trying to make you the same on things like, politics and hobbies and religion and things like that. But they're trying to make you opposite on these four spectrums, because here's the truth. These opposites attract when trust and respect are high. But when trust and respect are low, these differences repel.
Right. So again, I said the reasons we get married, the reasons we get divorced are often the same reasons. It's like, okay, what changed, right? What changed was not the behavioral styles. Those were there all along. Yep. It was what? It was the trust and respect that changed.
That's exactly right. So we're talking about environment. First category under environment was conflict. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the difference between stable and dynamics. Okay. The next category under environment is change. And we won't spend tons of time on this, but it's suffice it to say that people on the dynamic side are a little bit more into let's try something new. Let's try something else. Let's not get stuck. Let's not get bored. Let's move into something exciting or new or different. People on the stable side are a little bit more motivated by stability and consistency. And so what you might find is you and I have had this conversation. We've talked about, we're going to put out a newsletter. We're going to do a podcast. We're going to add this new thing. We're going to add this new thing. Well, dude, you drove all those things. You come in and you're wanting to do all these new things pretty quickly. And it's another way that I see you as not so much on the stable side. You're the kind of guy that's going to say, hey, it's time to try something new.
Right.
And I'm the one in our relationship saying, well, wait, we've only done this podcast like for 4 weeks. Let's keep doing what we're doing.
So I'm curious if, these different elements, spectrums of human behavior, is this just exclusively for the workplace, or is it for kind of all aspects of life? And I think, obviously we talked about relationships just a moment ago and it applies to that. But right now we're talking about, being dynamic or stable. Me, myself, like you said, I might get bored with something or want to move really quickly or ready for the next thing. I also see that in just my everyday life as well. Like whatever it may be, hobbies. No, that hobby was fun for a week. Okay. I want to do something bigger and better now. Right. And so, talk a little bit about that.
It's a really good question, because I have a lot of clients who will say, well, I'm this way at work, this way at home. And it's really hard to say, because again, this is a construct and we're all on a continuum. We're all on a spectrum in one way or another. So the general idea is, and I'm going to go back a little bit, process or fast, right? People tend to be that no matter what. But it does show up very differently. For example, I've worked with a lab before. I've worked with clients that were lab technicians. Mm-hmm. You kind of hope they're processing,
right?
You hope they're not going, I'm in a hurry. Let's just call that whatever and move on, right? And I hope the fire department's not processing too long. I hope they're deciding.
Let's think about this house that's burning down right now. What should
let's have a committee meeting
here, right?
Yeah. So what I'm getting at here is that somebody who might be fast but a lab technician knows how to do process work, and someone who might be process but they're a fire person, they might know to just act quickly. So it's not going to show up the same in all your different contexts, but it doesn't mean it's changed at what your core nature is in that way. And so your personal life, and then secondly, I'll say that because we're on a continuum, we all sort of take breaks from our basic style. We go into our secondary, or we go into a different style. So you might be a person at work who's a change agent all the time, but your morning routine, you've got to have your latte, and you've got to drive to work this certain way, and you've got to have these things in place. Otherwise you start to get stressed out. So you're going to have parts of your life that don't fit this style.
Right.
It's not 100%.
Okay. That makes sense. But generally speaking, this is going to apply to most aspects of your life.
Yeah, it's going to follow you around.
Okay. Gotcha. And so where do you fall in this? Dynamic, more stable?
Let's go back to the first one really quick. Process fast. Where would you put yourself on if 50, or whatever, 50 is the middle, and if 1 was process and 100 was fast, where would you put yourself?
Well, shouldn't we do this for each other?
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
So where would you put me on that
process
scale?
Fast. I would say I'm going to put you close to 40. I'm going to put you kind of close to the middle, but on the process side.
Okay.
1 was process, 10 was fast. Did I say that right?
Wait, so you got set up your scale first.
The scale is 1 to 100.
Oh, I know, but is process on one side?
Yes.
And fast is on the other?
Yeah.
So over 50%, you're then going to the fast.
Right. So I think you're actually at 40%. I think you're on the process side, but kind of close to the middle.
Okay.
Where would you put me?
I would put you. You're definitely on the fast side. Mm-hmm. I would probably put you at 60 or 70.
Okay.
I would say probably like 70, probably more like 75.
Yeah, I would say 80 or 85 for me, but right. I hear you. Right. You. Yeah. I in fact, every trouble I've been in my life, including little small ways, it's almost been about that. I do my best
too quickly.
Yeah. Oh, I do my best editing after I hit send.
Right.
Now, on the next one down, stable, dynamic, and we haven't finished talking about it, but let's go ahead. I would put you at, again, I'd put you close to the middle. I'd put you at 60, 65.
Okay.
On dynamic, toward dynamic, right? Where would you put me? Listen to him process, folks. He has to think through this.
I'd put you probably about the same.
About 65?
Yeah, about 65. Sounds about right.
Yeah. And I see myself, which again is self-assessment, at more like 70 or 80. But so, okay, real quick. Dynamic, environment, it's conflict first. So dynamic's a little bit more blunt, a little bit more to the point, a little bit more, let's debate it out. Stable, let's be harmonious. Let's not totally say what we think if it's going to be conflictual. Mm-hmm. The next one down is change, dynamics. Let's do something new. Let's try something else. Stable, a little bit more. Let's be stable. Let's be consistent. Let's not make a lot of unnecessary changes. The very last piece of this, which is the least weighted, would be how we like our physical environment.
Right.
So stable people, they like it more quiet. Mm-hmm. Work alone,
less multitasking around them, less business around them.
Yep. Less phones ringing, fewer distractions. Mm-hmm. Dynamics like they go work in a coffee shop, they go work where there's people. They're
just like a more active, busier environment.
Yes,
is dynamic.
Yep.
Actually, in a previous workplace, we had put out an employee survey, and we got about 7 or 8 responses back in this survey where we give them a chance to kind of fill in the bubble. They said more or less, it's really quiet in here, low energy. I wish we could really kind of do something to get the place, the energy up. Mm-hmm. So, okay, 7 or 8 responses, that's a good amount of people to say that. That's something to take note of. At the same time, we had like 3 people that said it's too noisy in here all the time. Mm-hmm. Like I can't get anything done.
That's exactly right.
This is the exact same workplace, folks. Yep. Not only that, this is a small open floor office. Okay, everybody is in the same room. It is literally just the different way people see the world.
Yep.
And the way different people need the environment around them.
Yep. I had two employees complain to me separately. One says, my workplace is like a frat house. It's loud. People are laughing. It's distracting. The other employee says, it's a funeral parlor. People are, I can't get anything done because it's just so boring. They literally shared a cubicle wall.
That's hilarious. So this could be confusing because you may see your side on one of these three elements and not the other. Would you say that, so generally speaking, you can kind of put conflict and change together?
Actually, conflict should be weighted the heaviest, and then change, and then physical. I'd weight them in that order.
Right. Okay, so weight them in the order of conflict, change, physical.
Yep. And that's environment. That's all. That was a complicated one.
So again, this is a little bit difficult to follow maybe because you're just listening to it and we don't have the PowerPoint and all that up like we normally do. So we'll just kind of back up after we do each one of these. Again, we're talking about 4 spectrums of human behavior. The first one we discussed was decision making, right? How you decide. You're either on the process side or on the fast side. And then the one we just covered is how you like your environment. And within that category, there are 3 subcategories, which are
conflict, change, and how you prefer your physical environment.
Exactly. And now we're going to move on.
And on that one, you're either stable or dynamic.
It's stable or dynamic on that side. Okay.
Yeah.
And here's a quick, if you're still figuring out where you fall on that one thing to think about is what situation do you find yourself in more often? In conflict with people because of something you said or an opinion you expressed? Or are you in a situation where you feel your opinion isn't being acknowledged at all?
Yeah, you might not have even said it.
You're right. So oftentimes when I'm in a class, if people are still trying to figure out what to do, I'll ask them that question and that will help them kind of figure it out.
That's good. I haven't tried that. I like that.
So we're now moving on to the third of 4 spectrums of human behavior, this is about tasks.
Yep. How we accomplish tasks.
So we have on one side, we have flexible. And on the other side, you have exact.
Mm-hmm. And we're finding that this one is difficult for people because of the 4, I would say over the years, this is the one people have the hardest time choosing for themselves, which is another reminder that, it really is about how you're being perceived. That's kind of what makes up our behavior style.
I wonder why this one's the hardest.
I've been wondering, and I think it's partly because both words, flexible and exact, are both really desirous. Like nobody wants to say I'm not flexible.
Right.
No one wants to say I'm not careful.
Right.
We're both. And the fact is, good news, guys, folks, you're both. Everyone's both. So you're gonna be both, but you're gonna have one that's a little bit sort of louder than the other. That's a little bit more prominent, right?
Absolutely.
Can I? Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, I don't have anything.
Well, I want to explain this one with the story. So I'm going to tell the story.
Go for it.
Christy and I are opposite.
Quit talking about your wife.
I love my wife.
Get over it already.
Get over it. I'm going to tell you you said that, dude. She's awesome and she's exact. And I'm flexible. And what that means is lots of things. And the positives, right? Things like, let's discuss this part first. What are the positives of both sides of this? Let me ask you, what do you think would be the positives of somebody who shows up more on the exact side?
Well, we haven't really gone over what these two mean.
Well, let's just do it this way.
Okay. Right? So the positive of exact, right? So I think of exact people as being more letter of the law. Right? There's kind of rules.
More careful.
You follow them. You're more careful. More exact. Sure.
Yeah.
Flexible people, the opposite of that, maybe more spirit of the law, right? You kind of, you're able to bend and break rules as needed. You see fit, as you needed. Right. There's no structure. There's no boxes, right?
Yeah, that's good. I think so. So the exact people, right? What they're going to bring to the table is, measure twice, cut once, as opposed to the flexible people, which might err toward measure once, cut twice.
Right.
Your exact people might be more careful. They might get things right. They might gather more research before they do something. They might make sure we don't get in trouble in the workplace.
Right. And so, okay, sorry. Before we talk about, the benefits of both one, let me just tell one story here. Well, you were going to tell us.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay. So I went to Costa Rica with some buddies a while back, and one of us is much more exact, and one of us is much more on the flexible side. So we're going to Costa Rica. We're on the plane, and my friend asked, "Hey, did you read the guidebook?" And I said, no, I didn't really read the guidebook. Did you? And he's like, yeah, I did. He gives me the guidebook, and, it looks like he studied this guidebook like he was studying, for the bar exam, right? There was just highlights, notes, all these things planned out, right? So a little bit later, he asked me, hey, so, you were in charge of getting a ride from the airport. Did you get that figured out? And I was like, no, I just thought we'd land and we would
get a ride,
call a taxi, and we'd have a ride. And so this was like kind of stressing him out. And so anyways, we go on. The first morning we're in Costa Rica. He literally has, an agenda of things he's ready to kind of go through for the day. So anyways, we kind of go throughout. At one point in the day, we kind of get a little bit off the schedule, and so we were going somewhere, and I say, hey, let's stop here for a little bit. This looks like a cool place. And he's like, no, we're already behind in the schedule. We have this thing already planned.
This is a vacation.
Right, this is a vacation. At this point, I'm like, you know what? Come on, let's get crazy here. Let's go way off the schedule and just see what happens, right? So this was a situation, probably an over-exaggerated situation of somebody that it's a lot more flexible, someone that just maybe myself that wasn't really thinking of planning this all out in the way he was, and then somebody that kind of needed that structure and what that looked like.
It's funny as you tell that story, it occurs to me one of the reasons it's hard for people to decide which one they are, because all of these are also seen through the lens of your own style. Mm-hmm. Like I would have thought, if you would have asked me, I would have thought you're on the exact side.
On the exact side.
But in that story, you're the flexible one.
Right. And I think you're right. I think a lot of times I would tend to be viewed more on the exact side with what I do. For some reason, in this context,
you were with someone who was way more exact.
I was with somebody that was even further, right? And so I did a little bit of planning, meaning I read the guidebook and I had some ideas of what to do and more or less how the week should go. But, he beat me out on being even more exact.
Yeah. And as you know, I struggle with the flexible side. Now, when I say struggle, right, there's good things that come with being on the flexible side. We tend to be a little bit more spontaneous, able to pivot, a little more, probably a little bit more creative in some ways, not always, but in some ways, a little bit more able to think on your feet and adjust and, et cetera. So there's, there's blessings and curses on both sides of this spectrum.
I want to ask you though about that creativity piece, because that part doesn't really quite seem to add up to me. Why a flexible person, obviously, that might see things kind of outside a box or a system, I can see that as an advantage, but creativity is a pretty deep, nuanced ability.
I'm going to take that back. I certainly don't mean creativity in any broad way. I don't mean artistic creativity or a lot of other kinds of creativity. It's probably not the right word, but I guess what I'm getting at is flexible people are going to be a little bit more likely to be able to say, hey, in this situation, let's not do what we've always done. Let's not do what the rules say. Let's look at a different way of maybe painting outside the box in this situation. So I guess the better word would be flexibility, which is the word we're talking about right now. So,
it's fine, because I'm thinking this as, again, this isn't necessarily about the big things, right?
Right.
About the small things.
Yes.
Now, you can think creatively on a big macro level, but on the micro level, somebody might be more on the or more on the exact side, and they might be a little bit more, systematic about their approach to it, things like that. So I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, no, that's good. So let's kind of give each other let's evaluate a little bit where I would put you. Flexible, if that was the 1 and exact was the 100. I'm going to put you at. Now again, I'm looking at this through my lens, which is extremely on the flexible side. So, and from my lens, I would put you probably at 75 or 80.
No, I think you mean the opposite, right?
I put exact on 100.
Oh,
exact's on 100 and flexible's on 1. I would put you at the 75 or 80 mark.
Towards the exact.
Toward exact.
Now, why do you think that? How's that show up?
I can't give you a lot of examples. I would say, well, you know what? I think it's probably in relation to where I'm at, because I see myself at 80 or so on the flexible side. So there's going to be lots of times where
It's a sliding scale.
It's a sliding scale, because you're correcting me. You're telling me, well, no, it's not that way. Or you're saying, or if I'm interpreting you not quite right, you'll stop me quickly and say, no, I said this, and you'll be very specific about what you just said. And, so I see you in that sort of correcting way.
Oh, that's actually a great example.
Yeah.
Because I do tend to, I feel like I listen carefully to what's being said, and then when things start to happen that are not what was said.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty quick to recognize that and call that out, and maybe even get a little bit tensed up of like, wait. No, you said that, and now you're doing this.
Last Tuesday at 3:47, you said these words.
Okay, that's a little bit crazy.
No, but hey, this is where your exact, though, actually dovetails with your dynamic.
Huh.
Right? You're not just exact. You're going to tell me this is what, you're going to be more confrontive about your exactness.
Okay.
Right? That's something that I see in you a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, for you, you're obviously way more on the flexible side.
Right.
Yeah, I would put you nearly as far to the flexible side as you can go.
But again, you're looking at that through your lens.
I'm looking at it through my lens as someone that's way over on the exact side.
Yep.
So again, it's a sliding scale. I would put you like, 25, 30%.
Okay.
So not all the way.
Not way over there.
Right.
Okay.
You could get even more flexible.
Yep.
Anyways.
Ethan just waved his hands with a crazy look on his face.
Jazz hands.
Jazz hands. Okay. let's do our last spectrum. Are you ready?
Yeah. Hold on. Sorry. Before we go to the last one, I just want to give if you're still trying to figure out where you land on this, again, I like to give kind of one question to think about that might help you decide here. Here's a situation. Boss tells you to do a 5 to 10 minute presentation on what you've been working on, but he wants you to do that the next day, right? 10 minutes before the presentation, he says, hey, don't worry about it, right?
You mean we're not going to do it?
Yeah, like, don't worry about it. We don't need you to do that anymore, okay? You're good. Are you a little relieved because you were just mostly going to wing it anyways? And you're like, okay, good. Or are you a little annoyed because you spent, quite a bit of time yesterday stressing about it and making sure you had everything right for that presentation?
Right. So the exact person you're saying is going to be kind of burned by that. Like, dude, I spent all this time and now you're saying we're not going to do it.
Now, this is an extreme.
No, it's a little bit extreme. Right. Yeah. But the flexible person's like, great, because I kind of prepared in the elevator on the way up to the meeting.
Right.
And so no big deal.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good, little exaggerated, but it fits really well. Yep.
So the last of the 4, so again, I promise we'll back up and review what we've gone over so far so we can track 4 spectrums of human behavior. We talked about how you decide, right? You either process or fast. Mm-hmm. We talked about how you like your environment, right? And that had 3 different elements to it. And then we just talked about...
And that one was stable or dynamic.
Yeah, stable or dynamic. And then we talked about how you accomplish tasks, right? Which was...
flexible or exact.
Flexible or exact. Mm-hmm. Now, the very last one here is social. Now, what do we mean by social, Mr. Nash?
Well, Mr. Nash, social...
Please, that's my father's name.
Okay, buddy. Ethan, buddy. Social is kind of the way we show up socially, and there's two sort of there's two different iterations of this. One of them is very physical. It actually shows up very, very physically. Active, we're going to have on one side, and cautious on the other. Okay, those are the 2 words: active and cautious. Let's start with how they show up physically. The people on the active side are really good looking. Just kidding.
All right, no more gin and tonics for you.
All right, no. People on the active side are more demonstrative, and people on the cautious side are less demonstrative, which means people on the active side, their facial expressions change more often.
Okay.
And they talk more with their hands, and their facial expressions are more dynamic. They change more. People on the cautious side, their facial expressions don't change as often, so they're going to be harder to read.
Okay. So we're talking literally physically how you view the other person.
Yes. Yeah. And so here's a couple ways of illustrating this. I've worked with clients, obviously, on both sides. Often I'll work with a cautious person who gets perceived as being critical, or they get perceived as being angry, when in reality they haven't said anything that would have indicated that, but it's the way they were read. And there's an old proverb, it might be from, I think it's a Native American proverb, if I'm remembering right, but it goes, if you give me a blank, I'll fill it in with demons. Right. So if I don't know what's going on for you because your face is not giving me any clues, I'm not going to go to my happy place. I'm going to think, oh, you're mad at me or you're critical of me.
Yeah, you don't know what's going on, so you kind of in your head make up the worst possible situation. It's kind of like when your boss says, hey, I need to talk with you tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
Like literally all you can think about is like, what did I do? How did I mess up? What's going on? Right? Because you make up the worst possible scenario.
Exactly. And people on the cautious side are going to they're going to be misread more. They're going to be misinterpreted because they're not giving you very much on their face. Now, people on the active side, where their struggle through life is going to be more likely to show things that they wish they weren't showing. I almost lost my first office job in my 20s because apparently I was communicating that I thought my coworkers were idiots, and I actually thought that, and and it must have been leaking out, like it was showing up. I was rolling my, I don't know what I was doing, but clearly it was showing up on my face what I was thinking, and I had no idea.
That's funny. You know, it's even interesting to think about in the context of podcasting with you too, because when I'm talking with you or making a point, your face is just like making all these expressions, and sometimes I'm like, is he not agreeing with what I'm saying? Like, I know if you're confused about what I'm saying, your face just shows me you're confused, or if you're, so it's, like one person is just gonna have more facial expressions, right? This is the active person. Use their hands more often. Cautious people, face doesn't change as much, less animated. A lot, not showing as much, more stoic in a sense. So it's physical. Yeah,
that's part of it. There's one more part. The other part of this, which is not quite as you shouldn't weight this one quite as much, but active people are more likely to be successful when they mix the social and the task together. They put those together, and so they're just fluidly going between chatting and working, and it just kind of happens more fluidly throughout the day. And they're probably chatting more often, connecting with people more often, doing their task while they're doing their social. People on the cautious side are more likely to separate social from task. And when you're doing task, you're doing task, and interrupting that for social can be a little more stressful for them, or the transition from task to social can be a little bit harder for them. And when they're doing social, even at work, they're doing social. Right. They're just more separate.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk about where we fall on this one. And what's interesting about this is I've had, I think, similar experiences as you in now, but throughout the course of my whole life, I've always gotten feedback of like, you look angry, or you look upset, or you look ecstatic, given the situation. So I've always felt like people can read me like a book, and I have no idea that they can read me like a book. Like I wasn't knowing that. I just didn't know that was happening. Yeah. But for you, as far as either active or cautious, you're certainly more on the active side. I would put you at about, 70 or so. That seems fair. Yeah. Okay. So, 70.
That's if that's true, and it's obviously your perspective, that would be nice, because I think I've started at 90 in my life.
Okay.
I think I moved a bit, which is actually part of what we're going to talk about in our future episodes.
I ask you, has this been something you've been working on?
Yes. Yeah. All of the one, I've worked on all four of the spectrums for me, actually, and some of them not as successfully, but that one I've worked on. I would say you are also on the active side, but again, I'm putting you pretty close to middle on almost, I think, all of these. I'd put you at if Is that 100? I'm sorry, where are we? Is active 100?
So active is 100.
Cautious is 1. I would put you at 60.
60. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm actually interested to hear that, or why you put me more towards the middle, because I've always viewed myself as such an active person in all these areas, right? Facial expression, animated with the way I use my hands and talk.
Yeah.
Now I'm a lot more slow with the way I might deliver things, right? I'm more of a processor, so that might kind of take away from how I show up as either active or cautious, maybe.
You know what might be in my way or influencing me is I've known you since you were actually very young.
Oh, yeah. Changed a lot since then.
You have. And I think that might be part of what I'm thinking, because as a baby, you were, as a little toddler too, you were actually really calm. I mean, super calm. And that might be kind of how I'm looking at you through a lens a little bit.
Right. Well, is this really about calm or not calm?
It's not. It's facial expressions. But you, even as a child, you were just in observation mode all the time. You just were looking around, you weren't ecstatic. You weren't.
Well, that might be the processing part.
That's exactly what I'm thinking now.
That's the processing part. Because I think, it's obviously we're both probably a bit jaded here,
we have a whole history together.
Yeah, we have quite the history together. I've talked to different colleagues of mine about this, and I think most of them see me pretty far on the active side.
I think you've actually adjusted my thinking on this. Now that you're saying all that, and I'm thinking about you as at a point in time right now, I'm going to move you up to 75.
Good. That's what I was trying to do. I win.
Your dynamic self pushed me to where I need to be. Hey, this is awesome. This has been good. In fact, we've actually talked a little bit about ourselves here, which has been fun to kind of see kind of how we perceive each other.
Yeah. So that is the 4 spectrums of human behavior. Go through them quickly one more time for the final review.
Start with decision making. So in decision making, you're going to be either on the process side or on the fast side.
Mm-hmm. The next one is how you like your environment. And again, remember there was 3 subcategories with this one, which was conflict was one category. And you are either stable or dynamic in all of these. So there was conflict. The next subcategory for environment was change. And the third and final one was physical, as in your physical environment. This is about how we prefer our environment around us.
Yep. And then there's how we accomplish tasks. Are going to be flexible, which is a little bit more spirit of the law, or exact, a little bit more letter of the law.
And then finally, social. You're either more active, which is more, expressive, more demonstrative, might be mixing the social with the tasks more often. And then you have cautious, which is face doesn't change as often, less animated, less expressive, and more if you're doing a task, you're kind of doing that task. You're not as socially active in that sense.
Yeah, and this whole thing is going to serve as a sort of an intro to, we're going to be digging into behavior styles for a few episodes, and this is the ingredients, actually. These 4 spectrums, how they combine together, create the ingredients for the 4-box model, the grid that we're going to be describing to you in future episodes.
Yeah, and I think you kind of gave a little teaser for upcoming episodes, because you were talking about how in a lot of these areas, you've worked on them and you've worked on growing in some of these categories or adjusting a bit. This is quite a long and nuanced conversation, but I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, wait, why do I need to work on these? This is just kind of who I am. And quick teaser here, who you are is awesome. Who you are is great. The bottom line here, we're not asking people, nobody should think that they need to jump from one side to the other, right? Like, I'm a very active person, but I want to be a lot more cautious person. No, who you are is who you are, and that's great. But there are certain areas where we can make slight tweaks, slight adjustments that will make us more effective in our relationships and our personal lives, more effective as managers, more effective communicating, more effective relating. A lot of really cool areas here. And by the end of this series we're doing on behavioral styles, we're actually going to talk about specific areas,
growth opportunities.
Yeah, specific growth opportunities for each of these styles, and have you all thinking about what might your growth opportunities be.
In fact, it's one of our favorite topics, and I think you'll really enjoy this.
Well, that about wraps it up for this first segment of our behavioral styles. I will like to mention one thing here. We have a newsletter once a month, nothing but great management tips and tricks. Nah, not really any tricks, mostly just tips. You can sign up for that newsletter by going to our website, nashconsulting.com, or just text the word leading to 66866.
What's that word again?
Leading.
LEADING.
Exactly. To the number 66866. And besides that, you know what? I love all of you out there that are listening.
I love you, man.
Because you're listening to our show. Anyways, bye.